Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where we unpack what really takes to run a profitable, sustainable practice. Today, we're tackling pricing. Yay, get excited. We're kind of going off the AI stuff a little bit, but through a totally different lens. So my guest today is Linda Hunt, founder of Some Solutions. Linda, if you could say hello.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Lee, for having me.
Yeah, and she's founder of one of the first fully remote accounting firms in the US, and her team continues to provide accounting services while consulting firms with service providers to streamline their operations and, most importantly, to optimize their pricing. So we're going to talk about, she's the creator of the perfect pricing formula. So I'm really interested to see what that means and then what a minimum aligned price means. So we're going to go over today how to design simple, profitable packages, how to use modern tools like AI without losing that human sense of alignment. So Linda, first of all, I want to hear a little bit more of how you got into bookkeeping, accounting, and then how that kind of translated into assisting other tax and accounting firms how to price their services.
Sure. So I am a corporate dropout. I was in corporate maybe 10, 12 years, and I got burned out from traveling all the time. So I was back and forth to the airport. I got to know my limo driver really well, who was a small, one of the first shared ride services that there was. And I started consulting with them. And that actually led me to leave corporate because I saw how I was helping them, reorganize their business. And that really spoke to me and inspired me. So I left corporate without a plan and basically started offering remote accounting and bookkeeping services. What I didn't realize, Lee, at the time, though, is I was offering so much more. I was kind of saying this is what I was doing, but I was really rebuilding operations, pricing, and all that stuff. Once I started to realize that several years later into my practice and talking to other accounting professionals, bookkeepers out there who were struggling, I started working with them and helping them figure out the business behind bookkeeping or the business behind accounting services. So that's kind of how I got into the educational journey as well.
So you basically were with the founder of the Uber concept, and then you started advisory services all in one limo driver experience.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
That is pretty good. So
Yeah,
let's talk about what you consider like a traditional bookkeeping firm, how they're running. And then you obviously were offering what I'll call advisory services and things that are a little more advanced behind just balancing the books. Kind of explain to me what you think is like the old way of what a bookkeeper does today versus perhaps what they should be doing. And then let's get into how to maximize my profits, how to price that.
Okay. So old traditional way, right? We think bookkeepers, accountants who are providing the bookkeeping services think in tasks. Oh, I reconcile the books. I enter in, I track the receipts. I do all of that. So they're thinking about the tasks and that's how they're communicating it. Yeah, we're still doing all of that stuff, but today there's a lot of AI tools that help us streamline and make that, like, we use Double in my firm. I don't know if you've heard of Double. It used to be called Keeper. Now it's being called Double. And we use that from day one of the bookkeeping service, right? From day one of the month. And we use it all the way to help us streamline month-end closes. We've gotten a lot of our less complicated closes down to 4 days. What that allows us to do is do analytics. It allows us to look at GL analysis. It allows us to add value-added services, right? The other piece that we also do is we look at KPIs for our, depending on who we're working with, we'll create like a dashboard. We'll use a dashboard tool and those kinds of things. So we're providing more value added. We're also getting a little bit more involved in financial operations, the feeders into the numbers, right? So there's the reporting side, but I've got my bookkeepers really thinking about how does this get there and how can we make that more efficient?
Right. So instead of just reporting, here's your income statement, here's your cash statement, it's more, hey, your margins went down or up.
Mhm.
Your cash flow is forecasted. If it goes on this trend for the next 3 months, you might be in trouble. What can we change? What if we
Exactly.
increase your pricing? What if we, reduce headcount? Those kind of things. So you're saying you're already seeing bookkeeping in the new way because of
Mhm.
the AI technology. So what it's doing basically is it's a labor force, right? It's able
Yeah.
to do all the tedious work that I don't think any bookkeepers enjoyed unless they're really into their coffee and, just sitting there mundane tasks, but it actually empowers them. And to me, in some ways, this is kind of the golden age or golden opportunity for tax and accounting firms. Is that similar kind of what you're seeing and what you're doing in your current firm?
Yes, it is. And the other thing that it's doing is it's getting you out of thinking. You're thinking about results, you're thinking about deliverables, you're thinking about the client. I find in a different way. So a lot of accountants and bookkeepers, I don't want to talk about tax professionals because I don't know that mindset, but they they're tired of the mundane, right? They're tired of doing it. It's like, and there is this perception that, well, because business owners are savvy and they're going, well, AI can do that for me. So why do I need you? Right. So then you can kind of feel, as I was talking to some colleagues the other day, they're like, well, my business is going away. I'm like, your business is not going to go away. I go, you just have to change a little bit and you have to realize that you are already providing more value to that business than you realize. You're just not, we have to change the way our professionals, our industry has to change the way they're thinking about
Well, they're reading too many CNBC headlines, and
it.
then the
True.
journalists straight out of college that are using AI to write their articles, the doom and gloom. And yeah, do I believe, and I've done a podcast on this already, that the bottom, what I'll call the entry level stuff, even in tax and in the bookkeeping side, 100% these tasks, bill pays, a lot of these things are going to be replaced with AI technology, and it's
Yeah.
just it makes total sense. But guess what? That frees you up to do proactive, like real advice that gets a business from just going through the motions to say,
Mhm.
hey, here's a plan. This is our 3 month plan. This is our 6 month plan. This is our 12-month plan. What type of profit are we looking for? What type of lifestyle would you like?
Yeah.
How do we now drive the results? And then you said with KPIs, I think this is very interesting. And what AI is so powerful with is looking at lots of data and being able to put it
Yeah.
together in like a way that you can actually understand.
Right.
So if you get more and more people start following this mindset, I think you're correct that you have a moat. That client relationship is your moat, and you're now adding real value. So an accounting firm, an accounting professional should feel empowered in some respects. Why do you think you're seeing a little pushback, or what is the fear? Are they reading too many headlines? Is it just because this is the same old, same way? This is the way I've been doing it. I can't think out of the box. Is that kind of what's holding them back?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, right? It's people don't like change, right? Most of us don't like change. You want to be able, I don't know if you QuickBooks Online has actually changed the way it appears. And it can be jarring if you're gonna go in and all of a sudden you knew you had to get something done, boom, and now you're dealing with, it looking differently. The other thing I find with our profession is they don't know how to sell, right? They're not comfortable selling. So they're so used to saying, this is what I do. And they're talking about tasks. So we've got to get them thinking more about what are the results that they're delivering. And Lee, you were talking a few minutes ago about, what's a 3 month plan? What's a 6 month plan? That intimidates a lot of accounting professionals, right? They just want to be able to do the work. They don't consider themselves analytic. And I beg to differ because most of these people are intuitive around numbers, right? They know the numbers. They can probably tell you what the bank balance is for, their 10 clients or whatever, because they work with it so often. It is just a matter of having a new idea in there, right? Having a new seed to say, I'm already doing this. How do I communicate it? And I think for a lot of folks in our industry, whether we're right brain, left brain, whatever that is, it's just a matter of pointing out to them that you're already doing this and this is the way you speak to it.
Well, and so I'm going to even back up even more. You don't need to know because if you already understand the numbers, you can pull all those numbers in and ask AI. So our tool we call
Yeah.
Max, And Max is driven. We have like a knowledge layer on top of ChatGPT and Gemini. And basically, we've taught it everything about the tax code, everything about cash flow accounting. And it's very intuitive, very smart. But you can just go in and say, hey, Max, here's my client, B&B restaurant. They have, 25 employees. They have $3 million in revenue. Here's our latest KPIs. Can you compare this and give me a game plan for them to plan a growth strategy? They want to get a bottom line of X. They want to improve this KPI by X. And what's beautiful is Max will kick out this really articulate game plan, and then you, the human in the loop, can fine tune it or ask follow-up questions to the prompts. But to be honest with you, a layman who's not trained in perhaps accounting or bookkeeping may not know the exact ways to write those prompts or how to get that type of outputs. But you can not only guide and have a conversation with the AI technology, but you actually get a report that now you can communicate the game plan. And this is where your value is. So, are you starting to get people to start understanding that's how the tools versus, because you had mentioned you use double. That's just the underlying software. So I'm a big believer, and this is what my business is all about. We're about the relationship layer. And I am a big believer that the relationship layer is going to be the most important part about the tax and accounting industry. I think you're going to have a race to the bottom of AI technology, AI automation, some tools that will get it close or not. There's a rule of thumb, I've mentioned this before. In accounting, 95% accurate is 100% wrong. So how far it goes, how good it gets, I'm not going to predict the future. I'm not Elon Musk with my robot army, and we're all going to have staff and no work, and it's going to be great. But the way I see it today, and the way I'm deep into AI, is these tools really complement you as a human, and they give you superpowers. They really are. They're AI labor. They're helping you now move past what would be like historical analysis to proactive suggestions, right? Proactive strategies. So now that you're starting to communicate more and more with the tax and accounting space, so let's keep it bookkeepers and accounting. We'll keep the tax people out of it. I just always, if I don't say tax, or if I don't say enrolled agent, I'll get a lot of emails or LinkedIn comments. Why do you forget about us? We don't. We love tax professionals. A huge part of our business.
Huge part.
Yeah. So how do you see that transformation occurring, and over what period of time? And then let's start talking about now how you position kind of these new advisory services in a pricing model.
Okay. So basically what's happening, where I started talking about double. Yeah. So the first place that we started implementing this was in how can we further streamline our service delivery? QuickBooks Online, we're a QuickBooks Online house. There's a lot of automation there already. There's other AI tools, but we've tweaked that tool so that it really works for us. And it also does provide some analytics. We then take those analytics and we're putting that into AI. We might be doing it in a flat file. I didn't know Max existed, I'm going to be honest with you. So, and we are getting information back. So we've already, my firm offers everything up through controller level services, right? So we have bookkeepers out there who are just doing bookkeeping. We have bookkeepers out there who are, or firms out there that are offering everything up through CFO services. It really just depends on where they are. If you want to talk about, bookkeepers can do things in different ways. But how you want to start talking about it is start talking to your existing clients with this. And I'm a big believer. I do not charge by the hour at all. We are all into value-based packages. Even though I have created the perfect pricing formula, which is really the minimum aligned price, right? It shows you how to calculate the dollar amount that your business needs to, and what you need to live without basically hustle, burnout, or paying your client to do the work, which I have found a lot of accounting professionals still do, right? They underprice because they're either using a spreadsheet because it's based on transactions and there's no correlation between what they need to support their business, right? And live and what they're charging. So they think, oh, I've got to get one more client. I've got to do more. What the minimum aligned price does is it brings back in the human factor into your pricing And then from there, you leverage that number into results-based packages. So that's how my firm does it.
Yeah, and what's great about Max and tools like that at AI, we have a proposal, we'll call it a feature inside of CountingWorks Pro, but basically what we're able to do is you're able to, if you, and we're not into hourly. I mean, you basically have just capped your income if you're
Exactly.
charging hourly, and you're not taking into effect your expertise and knowledge and being able to create systems and platforms where perhaps you have lower
Mhm.
paid sources where AI is doing certain work and maybe some employees offshore, you're doing certain whatever. But the real value there is to the end user. And what we even have an AI tool that goes out to the market rates per area or per niche. So, for
Okay.
example, if you're a dental practice in San Francisco looking for CFO advisory, your probably expectations are much higher for what that would cost you versus if you were in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Correct.
And then AI, what's beautiful about it is kind of gives you like a back office kind of looking at it going, hey, well, you're a little underpriced, you're a little overpriced here. But I think that is a tool to assist. But value pricing, packaging, I think is the key to life. I interviewed the CEO of CFO Project last month, and
Mhm.
we talked about it. And what they do is they train bookkeepers to become CFO advisors.
Okay.
And their average firm picks up just under $2,000 a month per client, right? So very quickly you have 10 clients, that's a you have a business. If you have 40 clients and you can minimize the amount of labor, you have a really nice lifestyle business. So I think I agree with you on the packaging. So let's talk about how you now start communicating this value. How do you start packaging? So what are your recommendations? How do you do it at your firm? What have you seen to be the most successful way to package, let's say, bookkeeping through a CFO advisory like service?
So I'm actually in conversations with a high-end construction company, a landscaping construction company right now. And basically what I'm doing when I'm having those initial conversations is I'm listening to where are their pain points, what is it they need, right? Now, mind you, this particular firm, there's going to be a bunch of cleanup, right? There's some data integrity issues, there's all of that. So we're looking at financial operations, we're looking at reporting, we're going to clean that up. But I'm already planting seeds into how we can support them on a recurring basis. So I'm doing that right from the very beginning. Um, from the very beginning, I'm also talking about what it's going to give them, right? It's going to give them data integrity. It's going, those types, the you have to listen to what the pain points are that they're looking for have solved. And then um, I I says, well, a traditional month, I might say something like a traditional month end close will give you X, Y, and Z. You want to relate the task that you're doing to for me anyway, this is what works to the pain point that they're currently experiencing and what they want to, move forward from. So our packages are based on how I put together packages is basically there's some core services, right? So that's our minimum package. It's the core things that they need, right? And I look at the accounting cycle. That's the other thing that I do. What is it this business is going to need for an entire accounting cycle year? I price that. Then we go to, okay, do you want to have analysis? Do you want, but I'm not sitting there saying, do you want analysis? It's like, I already know what they're looking for. And I'm presenting and saying, well, this package, and I don't give them a choice. I don't give them the three, let's just say I have three offerings. I don't turn around and say, well, I have three offerings. I go in and I say, what I'm hearing and what would best fit you since you don't have an on-staff CFO, is that if we're coming in, we're participating with your leadership meetings, we're presenting your financial results, we're doing cash flow analysis. I'm solving the problem for them. And I'm saying, this is the package that fits you. If there's something different, right, if you get pushback or whatever, that becomes a whole different conversation.
All right, so I'm going to throw out something
Okay.
to add to your technique. And what we have seen that's worked very well is you're still thinking like a bookkeeper. So you're still kind of talking about these are the pain points that business owners have.
Mhm.
And what is it? They're not usually educated on accounting stuff. They're salespeople. They're usually sales and development people. They might be a sole proprietor, right? So they might be a small business owner. They're a plumber. They're an electrician. The last thing they want to worry about is their QuickBooks. And I know you say data integrity. We know all this is really important. But at the end of the day, these business owners really are looking at how can I have a better financial outcome without any hassles of dealing with it. So you're taking half of it with what you're talking about. So you're kind of like the base product is kind of, but if you add on that aspirational, what if I could take your business from $500,000 a year in revenue to $1.5 million in 3 years? Or more? What if I could help you scale? What if I could help improve your cash flow? So that you're a profit first mindset. And what I have found is that if you can now make that more part of the narrative and put it into everything, your website, your email newsletter, your social media posts, when you do a proposal, include this language inside the proposal. And that's the beauty of AI. So AI is able to customize all this, articulate it even to their, if I'm a plumber, use plumbing language, right? I think that even amplifies the success and how much value that the client gets out of you and their perception. So when it comes to, I like this. So I've heard a lot of people, we see both sides. We see people do ABC. Here's my three base proposal products, packages, versus saying, okay, I have a base and then I go up or down. Well, I guess you don't go down because the base is a base, but you go up and then you decide how far for each client. So and accountants definitely feel very biased one way or the other. Simplification makes it easier. But what have you seen, like, as you start seeing this, so you're at the base, let's say you have a client, and then you suggest something that's a little farther ahead. Let's say it's another 500 a month or 1,000 a month. How do you overcome that? How do you communicate? How do you present that so your client feels confident that you're going to get the results that you're promising, or they're going to get the results they're promising?
Well, it's the deliverable, right? It's the result, right? It's the pain point that to me, it's still the pain point that you're solving for them. They're looking for something specific. And it could be exactly what you said, Lee. Like, I want to do this in the least painful way possible. And we're dealing with businesses that are, they've grown, they did not invest in their financial operations. They may have invested in their reporting, but there's cracks, right? So a lot of times we're smoothing that out, fixing that. And then by that time, we've already proved our worth, we've proved our value, and we're into recurring services with them. But I actually want to step back a minute, because what you're talking about, I can help, someone going in and saying, I can help your business for, in 3 years get to X. Not every accounting professional feels comfortable doing that. So, for my firm, we're kind of like, we offer that consulting services, but not all of your accounting professionals are doing that. So I'm going to kind of interview you a little bit and say, how do you, because I could tell you, I know some of the folks that I talked to, their stomach flipped when you said that. They're going to be like, that is so something I do not do. And okay, that's okay, because not everyone is meant to do that. So how do you help those folks who are sitting here going, that's why they're panicking about AI, because they don't want to do that?
Yeah, I think there's a comfort level, but this is the reality of where we are today. And I think the market is already, so this is the one thing that I continue, and a lot of times it's deaf ears. Like I see what's going on. We're seeing how referrals have changed, for example, into ChatGPT. People are going straight to ChatGPT saying, who should I hire? Or my current accountant only does this. Who in the market should I look at? And the market has already moved as far as just the way people are using AI to source people. The second area that's happening now is, as you said, people, you're hearing accountants are saying it themselves. Oh, I'm going to be out of business. Well, which means, no, you're not. All you need to do is use the AI tools. The saying is, and I've heard a bunch of people say it, you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by an accountant who uses AI. And I 100% believe that. So in the process, Linda, you already said you guys are using dashboards, KPIs. So there's software that already helps them get 50% there. So now let's use tools and AI that help me now do this advice giving, analyze these numbers. All I need to do is ask the right questions. How do I create, and you can interview a client. You can even use tools like Max to create that intake form and or even a questionnaire of
Mhm.
questions. So even on your first discovery call, okay,
Yep.
I'm onboarding a new client who's a construction business. They are currently at X. They have really messed up books. The beginning, we're going to work on this, but let's give a strategy of how I can now take this business
Exactly.
from 1 million in revenue up to $10 million in revenue. I'm just giving a big, let's do big
Yeah.
dreams.
Okay.
But AI 100% with your assistance can create a story that's personal to that particular client based on their own numbers, based on that interview. You can even record the interview, take the transcript of that, throw it into Max, throw in their last income statement, say, this is their demographics, this is where our goal is, and say, hey, I want to get a full on report and a full strategy plan. I want it to be 10 pages long. I want it to have charts. It's doing all of this. You do not need to be a brain surgeon to use it. It's just you can't be afraid of it, and you need to start trusting it. So the idea here is that AI gets you 90% of the way there. You as the human now go in and analyze. Well, wait a second. The AI went off. You went rogue here. And I literally have conversations with my tools every day. And like if you're walking by my office, you're like, who is he talking to now? I'm like, I will be, and I use the transcript tool. So I talk to it. I got to the point where I couldn't type fast enough and I have 38 typos. It still knew what I was asking. But what I have found is I have full on conversations and I treat the technology as a true assistant and even a partner. And I consider it a clone of myself. So it learns my memories. It learns,
Right.
how I do things, how my processes are. And you can set it up so you can have your own. This is my process. This is the type of reporting I want to do. This on monthly meetings. This is the type of strategies and output we want to go over with our client. This is what a quarterly looks like. This is what an annual. This is what a long-term plan looks like.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is, you as a bookkeeper or a trained accountant are way ahead of the game. You understand now what these numbers mean. You understand trends. You can see, hey, this is a problem. You might even have openings for fraud and who knows kind of things. But that is what your value is, and that is now how you price. So that would be my answer to it. We're seeing people that are running with this, and I'm like begging the profession to evolve and don't be afraid. And just, we always say, just start with your client communication. Just use it to write responses, be more responsive to clients, and then give a little more analysis. And you would
Mhm.
be shocked. You might say a client question might come in or a problem, and you're like immediately, well, this is the answer. But if you throw it through an AI tool, it might find 20% more or 25% things that you didn't even think about. And
True.
that is where the real value add is. And the AI by itself is not going to get that output. The human in the loop is really powerful. So that's kind of my long-winded answer to the reverse interview, but that's how I would do it. And I think what's really important and what you're kind of talking about but not getting into is this is why we keep talking about client narratives and your brand narrative and how you communicate everywhere. And if you're getting this kind of information out to clients, they're going to start listening and they're going to differentiate you very quickly from, Intuit just what they put $100 million in OpenAI. So QuickBooks is going to be loaded with all kinds of AI tools. You as a professional sure the hell better be able to really add value on top of that because it's going to be a situation where if you don't, then you're correct. That type of tool will automate you, perhaps out of business. Those that move I feel have the ability to be much more valuable to their client base and their clients can have better financial outcomes. What does that mean? They're willing to pay you more, they're going to refer you more, et cetera. So there's my long-winded. How does that fit into what you're talking about, Linda, on pricing and kind of moving, the people you're talking to forward?
Right. So I'm actually going to go back to the beginning, right? When I started my remote accounting services business, there wasn't any tools to support being remote. Back in 98, I think, gosh, you had to go into this. I don't even know what you call it. But anyway, there were no tools. So we based the foundation of all of my workflow and all my processes is in communication. It's in that client relationship. So in a way, I actually didn't realize until we just had this conversation that that's really the crux. I shouldn't say, of course I knew it, but it's like you reminded me that's the crux of where our services lie. And Yeah, we're using some tools, maybe not to the extent that you are, to automate us and to enhance the client relationship. But our clients are, we're doing more of those, value added services beyond the AI tools. So again, I'm going to go back to, yeah, AI pricing, you can use a tool, but there still is that human factor that you're going to need to look at, because if your body, like when you state a price, if your body doesn't believe you should receive it, and there's cues, right? There's, when you say something, it's like your stomach flips, or you get nervous, or you over explain, or you or you add extra services when you state your pricing because you're not comfortable with it. So AI can say it, but if you don't believe it, you don't believe you are offering that value, you're a lot of times your money story gets in the way. You're not going to succeed with it. That's what I find. That's what I find in the industry. It's like, if you don't believe it, and there are going to be people who will be able to power through it, but then it's just like the person who wins the lottery ticket, right? They might have been poor. They win the lottery, and then in 3 years they're poor again, right? So you have to.
That's a very sad story. Yes.
It is a very sad story, but that's because they're not used to having money and being rich. So, and yeah, so we can get into that whole nervous system side, right? That whole
Well, that's where I'm
psychological side.
leading. And I'm
Yeah,
going to
I'd
say
love to.
something about, so I believe, and I've said this to my own staff, I think the best salespeople are not salesy at all. They are they believe in what they're doing, and they're
Hmm.
completely confident that I'm going to make your life better.
Hmm.
And if you have that mindset and you are moving the needle for clients. So I'm going to back up a little bit before we get in the nervous system side of things and then
Sure.
how people look at it. I do believe there is a technique you can use when you're doing kind of this advisory level. Now you're kind of moving the needle a little bit, where you can put accountability into how you offer these services. So people feel nervous, like I can't promise or I can't help someone go from 500 to 1.5 million. Well, you can give them the plan, and you can give them bucket A, bucket B, bucket C. These are the things we need to work on. These are the things that are going great right now. Here's the ones we're looking at. Here's the ones
Right,
we need to
right,
improve.
right.
And once you make them accountable, and during your monthly meeting, you're going over this and say, hey, this looks like we're still a little bit off. What can we do this
Yeah.
month to improve it? Now you're putting it on them versus
Hmm.
you to deliver, because you're just giving them the roadmap. You're not out there running their business. You're giving
Right.
them the results of what they're doing and running their business. And you're giving them suggestions because of your experience and know-how on numbers, how to get there. So
You-
what do you think if that would kind of push
Yes.
bookkeepers a little more confident, and then actually,
Yeah,
make
I'd
them
love
feel
that.
more comfortable and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do?
So basically what you just talked about is boundaries, right? And you talked about the line in the sand where you're responsible for what the information that you're providing and what the client's responsible for. And that when you that is to me a blurred line for a lot of accounting professionals. They think if they're giving that advice, they're responsible for that advice. And I love that you highlighted that, because that is so, it's one of the things that we do all the time. It's like, here you go, here's your numbers. Or, for example, there'll be times when there'll be a system that we don't know, right? And we'll say, okay, we can align your data with it, but we are not responsible. We will look at it, we will identify where things are, but we are not responsible to fixing it. And our fee doesn't reflect that. So you make it very clear up front. So it's about the line in the sand. It's the boundary of where your responsibility and your services end. And you make that clear in your service offerings, in your packages, in
Yeah,
how
and this
you
gets
work with
into
your client.
scope creep, and why
Scope
an
creep.
engagement letter is so important.
So
And even in
important.
your proposal, this is
Yeah.
what we do. This is not
And this
what
is
we
what
don't
we
do.
correct.
Yeah,
Well,
this is what
actually,
you're responsible
sometimes,
for.
yeah,
Good.
sometimes you have to actually have to lay out what they are responsible for, right? Because oftentimes, like typical things, like now this is not such a big deal, but when a client needs to get you information, right? If you have a deadline and you're following up and they're not giving it to you, you can't do your job, right? It's not as prevalent anymore because there's online access and all that stuff, but it still isn't your responsibility. the client has to meet you in the working relationship.
Look at yourself as a coach, um, and in just not delivering numbers and results.
Exactly.
It's coaching and say, hey, this is how we did it last month. These are my three suggestions. And if you're not sure what those suggestions to be, ask AI what it should be, and then analyze it and go, okay, yeah, well, this makes a lot of sense. And then add some more human to it. But I think if you make it more collaborative, they're going to be more accountable. So anything, just like living on life and discipline and saying, this is how I run my day. Those without any sort of game plan probably aren't as disciplined. It's, happens with the way they eat, the way they exercise, the way they spend their time, and they get lost on their devices and they're not accomplishing something. And I'm not pushing everyone being tightly wound in your life is so, this is what I do. There's a combination or somewhere in the middle is a good one. But I think accountants can learn a lot of that by just putting in these processes, then putting these processes in place for their actual clients. So when I go to the scope creep, like, what are your suggestions? So we've gone through this. You kind of said this is how you like to have one pricing. You have a base. You add to that. So every price is
That's on
seems
recurring. Yeah, that's recurring services.
okay.
Yeah.
And you negotiate that. You have a proposal of some sort. They sign up and they pay you monthly. That's great. Then you put on an engagement letter on top of that. Do you do those yearly? Is it a never-ending engagement letter? It's like, what is your process at your firm?
Yeah. So pretty much it's an ongoing relationship. I don't renew it every year. However, I am talking to them at least once a quarter about this is what we've accomplished. This is where we are. I'm noticing, like I'll say, oh, I'm kind of noticing there's a volume increase, or I'm noticing that we're doing more analytics. I'll point out the things to them. Now, mind you, my packages also have a little bit of, they have cushion in there because I don't like to nickel and dime anybody. But every quarter we're having that conversation about this is where we are in the package. So if I have to make a change, I'm able to do that. Because to me, if you're not servicing your client based upon into the retainer that you've set, there's one of two things happening. It's either scope creep or you've got a training issue on your staff, or there's got to be an automation issue. It's going to be one of those two things. So have the conversation. Don't be afraid of it. The client wants to know, right? They're more interested. I've had some really good conversations about where we are in the package that always leads to more work and an add-on. Always.
Yeah, and I think
I shouldn't say always, 9 times out of 10. Yeah.
well, that's close enough. That's always. I'll give you that. 90%
Right.
is close enough. All right, so we've talked all around it. We've talked about being confident in delivering it, how to move yourself past just delivering numbers and make it more about the future. We've talked about being collaborative. What we really haven't dug into is how do you set your base price? I have my feelings, but I want to hear what your point of view
Yeah.
is. How do you create, what does that entry level base package look like? What do you charge? Is it different per region? Is it different per type of client, per revenue? Like, what are the variables that you put into it to kind of determine how you create your perfect price?
Right. Okay. So if we're talking to, so basically our pricing is our pricing. We work with clients all over the country. I do not adjust our pricing by region. So I don't do that. It's like my firm is based out of Connecticut, but it's not as regional anymore. But I don't let that be a factor. Basically, what the factor that I'm looking at is what is it the client's looking for. So I look at packages it's an old-fashioned way of thinking, but I look at it from not in the number of transactions, but in the core services, right? I call it basic processing. What are the things that we need to touch most frequently? What are the things we're touching once a month? What are the things we're touching once a quarter? And I kind of assign a time value to that, right? So there is a time factor in my packages, and then that gets. I also apply a blended rate, depending on the service level, on the technical level that's there. And then the third thing I'm adding is some contingency, right? So that we can live and grow with that client without having to go back and say, oh, every time you call me, it's additional. So I also have a minimum of which we will work with. So I know specifically that we're working with clients between 3 million and $30 million. If you're underneath that, I'm not right for you. I'm going to refer you out to somebody else. So you have to know who it is you shine with and who it is that you service the best. I also know that we provide accounting department services, meaning that we are in step with that client. We are probably talking to various people in that business. So my packaging reflects how we're delivering the service, right? Because we're in step, we're having a lot of conversation. So all of that gets factored in. So, I'm kind of giving a broad strokes here,
You're
but
not giving me the detailed numbers, which
I'm
is
not
fine.
giving you the
I don't
detailed
want you
number.
to, but I do. You did open up a few things that I think are really important
Okay.
that we're seeing applied over and over again for the most successful clients, and that is positioning. So
Mhm.
you work with the 3 to 30, put it on your website.
Yep.
Use talking points to speak specifically. Use images that speak to this. If you are working with physicians, have images of physicians. Speak in
Mhm.
their language in your copy, in
Mhm.
your social posts. However, you're asking for referrals, your newsletter. I think this is really important because you're going to attract more of the like-minded people that you're looking for. You'll also stop wasting time with people that don't fit your model, right? They're going to
Exactly.
you're not going to a Mercedes dealership if they want to
Right.
buy a Toyota, right? So they know now I'm not. So that's the problem with generalists, and that's the problem kind of with the vertical as a whole. No one likes to say this is claim my spot. This is who I am. This is who I target. But the firms that are the most successful do that. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. One is it helps people self-select, and it also kind of gets them ready for the pricing level that you're going to be able to support. I don't
Mhm.
work with smaller businesses. Here, I can refer you out. This is
Right.
my, who we work on. And they're already in their mind going, okay. And then if you are a niche player, now you're saying, I only work with medical practices with 5 to 10 million in revenue. Wait a second. Okay, I'm a medical professional that sits in that space. I'm probably going to choose that CPA, that bookkeeper, that CFO
Sure.
advisor over a generalist that
Right.
because they know physicians. And this general, I don't know if they know physicians. So there's already you're owning the real estate. What have you seen, or how do you articulate that when you're meeting with clients and advising them and coaching them?
So we have several industries. You're right. We have several verticals that we are experts in. And the reason why I choose to be in several verticals versus one is because I think it was in the early 2000s in my region when things were still very regional, there was a downturn in construction. There was a downturn in a couple of related industries that really affected my my business. So so I kind of have non-related verticals, right? That I'm working with. Um, I find that people know you for that, right? After all, like I really don't do a lot of marketing anymore because people just know, oh, you want to, like you said, physicians. Um, oh, you want to work, you're a physician, go talk to Linda. She's the one who's going to be able to help you. So you become known for it. You become the expert in that field. Especially if you work like for us, we don't do tax, right? So we work with a lot of tax professionals. They'll refer to us like, okay, this is who you need to support you because we work in tandem together. Um, how I'm presenting that to clients, they want to hear that you know them, right? As you know, like you want to make when you're talking to them, you want to talk to them and make it that you understand what they're going through, you understand their industry, you understand the nuances, and that really and that also, I'll say like when you're talking to AI, it's like AI is going to work for an accounting professional better than a layman because you know the right things to ask AI. I think you mentioned this earlier, talk about the prompts. So it's the same concept. It's the same concept. People want to know that you understand who they are and where they are.
The beauty of AI is, and it's against what people would think, it actually allows you to be even more personalized with your strategy delivery and everything. So it's a big deal. And then something that people don't realize is the conversation about who to recommend is slowly but steadily moving into ChatGPT. And it's still the market leader, or Gemini, right? So Google's AI tools are all over search. So the old way of blue links and people asking their friends and Googling them and going to the website, those conversations are happening inside these tools now. So if you are utilizing what I am suggesting and creating content, as I am the physician expert in $5 to $10 million revenue practices, and I have put myself out there, and then I have reviews from my clients saying so and so is the best, and it's a physician, you are going to be the firm that AI is talking about and recommending. And what's happening here is the professionals are putting their head in the sand and like, I am all afraid, I don't know what to do. They're not being a part of these conversations anymore because they're saying, I don't need a market. That's the last thing you do
Oh my
today
God.
in this world. You need to be the expert in whatever vertical or multiple verticals that you're doing. And it's really easy to utilize the technology and marketing techniques to do that. So I think it's really important. And then even as you kind of communicate and coach up your clients, definitely start mentioning to them where, and I agree, I 100% like you have regional downturns. And there's interesting, there was a big chat on, it was on Twitter or X or whatever you're going to call it today, about how the industry was doing, and CPAs, enrolled agents, bookkeepers were talking, and there is a huge disconnect. There are parts of the economy that are booming right now. There
Right.
are other areas in regions, so it could be plumbers in, Southern California are booming, but plumbers in certain parts of wherever are not. And there's a huge disconnect, and it's all over the place. But by hedging your bet here, you're able to sustain that, and you're able to handle the downturns and
Mhm.
upturns. And then I think that's really important that you kind of identified that very quickly. All of a sudden, the Northeast goes through a construction downturn for whatever reason. Some industries shut down, some migration, whatever, and now you're hedging yourself. So when you would advise clients, is there a certain amount of verticals that you guys work with, or, I'm going to say that one. And then two, what's nice about this is once you know a vertical, you know all the questions your clients are going to ask before they have to ask them. So
Right.
your perception is actually easier to do your job because you already know what they do. You know how you've seen multiple points of view of how the other practices run. That's even more value
Correct.
for you.
Correct. So we work with 7 verticals. And then the other thing that I've done is I've actually at least once a year, I bring the decision makers from those verticals together and we have a roundtable. We actually get together, whether it be on Zoom. A couple of times we've gotten together. It was before COVID. We haven't done that since, but we get together and we have a roundtable discussion and we bring together they bring together best practices, not necessarily accounting practices, but just different things that they're dealing with in their industries and the trends that they're seeing. So that's a value add that I just do. And they're always fascinating conversations. And I learn how to then I learn what they're dealing with and I learn how to create a solution because I'm putting myself in a situation where I'm learning more about the industry and more about my clients and how my clients are interacting. So don't be afraid to even if you don't have verticals, don't be afraid to bring your clients together and have conversations. Maybe it's a conversation about pricing. Like we sometimes we have specific topics. Sometimes it's a free, not, I don't want to say a free for all, but it's a open forum
You never
discussion.
know where you're going to get on Zoom, so you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
Get ready to
Yeah.
hit the mute button as much as possible. So, Linda, I think this has been a really good conversation. I know we've kind of gone all over the place with this.
Mhm.
Is there anything that I've really missed that you wanted to cover today? I know this whole nervous system alignment and capacity, and there's a lot of different things you have with kind of the formulas that you've been using. But what would you want to finalize this talk on?
I think for me is don't be afraid of the tools, don't be afraid of the change, and realize that there is still that human factor. Humanity is not going to go away, so it's about balancing it and welcoming the change. So yeah.
Awesome. So if someone was an independent bookkeeper and wanted to kind of wanted some coaching, wanted some
Sure.
advice from you, How do you work with professionals? How would they contact you?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. They can sumsolutions.com. It's SUMSOLUTIONS.com. Book I think I call it a financial clarity consult. Book a call with me. Let's have a discussion and I'll see if let's see if there's a way I can support you.
That is awesome. So hopefully I've shared some things with you. Hopefully it was a two-way street here on
Yeah.
learning. And again, for our users or our listeners and our users, I'm thinking I'm in my software head right now. But the listeners to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, I appreciate you. If you found some value here, obviously share, ask us any questions. I'm obviously available on LinkedIn and love the feedback. I do want to thank everyone. Our viewership for the Growth Minded Account, it's not huge in the way that you have Joe Rogan and such, but it is amazing to see how we keep doubling each month and really appreciate all the feedback. And hopefully we're trying to educate the entire vertical, this industry, on how AI and this modern firm should look and how it should operate. So hopefully you'll find a lot of value in what we're talking about today. So until next week, we have some really good, actually, I think I already have 2 or 3 more episodes the next 3 weeks already figured out. So really good topics. We're kind of changing up a little thing here or there. So a lot of value for ROI that you can get before next year. So you can plan for 2026. So again, thank you for being a listener to Growth Minded Accountant. Thank you, Linda, for spending time with us. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Lee.